So a lot of people here, especially those of you that have never gotten involved in sync, you think to yourself, oh, well, I really want to get my music in film or television or maybe, you know, some campaign for some advertising, but there's so many different other places your music ends up and you never realize it. You could be on an airplane watching them, you know, show you how to buckle a seatbelt because none of us know how to do that and we need a video for it. You know, but there's music for that. There's, you know, your kids try to get a job at Baskin Robbins and they're watching the video for how to do it. And there's music in the background there. There's one of my tracks actually got into a Hallmark ornament, you know, that I immediately went and bought like 750 of them to hand out to family and friends. You know, but you know, so anywhere you can imagine music is, that's where our music goes. And oftentimes it isn't just the company coming and saying, well, we don't want to spend the money on, you know, Metallica, you know, for this thing because we're cheap, you know, we'll go to a music library because their music is terrible. It's not the case. You know, many years ago, yes, you know, music sounded like a Dianetics commercial, you know, or like Chuck Norris doing, you know, exercise videos at 5 in the morning, you know. And, you know, nowadays the music is indistinguishable from the greatest music you've ever heard, and it's made, you know, the celebrity musicians a little nervous because, yeah, I mean, I've got guys writing for me that their stuff is every bit as good as Hans Zimmer or any of the people that you can imagine. People just don't know who these people are. So, you know, when you're trying to think about, you know, how do I get my music in a library, it's not only the big things that you're going for, it's any kind of application your music can get involved in. So.
I mean, I actually wrote a library track that got picked up by an artist, covered it, made it a single, put it out, shot a video for it and the whole thing, and that wasn't the intention. He wrote the song to, you know, to put out in the world, you know, for placements, and actually got picked up as an artist track.
And lastly, many library tracks end up becoming huge tracks that you would never even believe. So one of my biggest credits is the Monday Night Football theme for ESPN that we're all familiar with. Bum, 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 bum. Well, that was a track from the APM catalog. You know, that was something that was written back in the 70s. A guy named Johnny Pearson did it, had no idea that it was going to have the life that it's become, and now it's synonymous with football. The People's Court theme is an APM track. You know, there's, you know, so you never know where your music is going to end up.
Exactly. As an opportunity for composers and songwriters, this is a revenue stream that it's like the gift that keeps on giving. Because once your song gets into a piece of media and content, it stays there forever. It's not going to come out. So if they rerun it, if it becomes syndicated and travels around the world, like for instance the Monday Night Football theme, it's just going to be evergreen. You keep paying. Now, if you're a popular artist, you may have 4 years of a big career and then your songs fall off and they're on Spotify and maybe they don't get listened to anymore. But when you get a song that's placed in content, that's pretty much forever. So for all you guys who are thinking about doing this, it's a great opportunity to create an additional revenue stream to support your dreams, make things happen, get some money in your pocket.
I was actually just talking about that with somebody right before we got up on stage. I got a song in a Queen Latifah Christmas film. And so every Christmas, it airs like crazy, and 9 months later, because ASCAP and BMI are usually about 9 months behind, 9 months later, I get a nice royalty check. So,
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, it's like Merry Christmas in July, right? but for you guys out there, if you're trying to be an artist, if you're trying to get a record deal, this is a great secondary income, like you said.
As an artist,
yeah.
You get the song in the show, and people are spamming it, and they want to know what it is, and they find it, and they cross-reference it with your artist career.
But what I would say is don't go in with that concept. Like, you know, you're trying to fill a need, you're trying to make money to keep you going so you can keep doing it. And that's what this can do. And I tell people a lot, it's almost like your retirement fund. Like you're putting music in, it's not gonna make a ton of money in the beginning, like a song would. Like you have a hit song, it makes crazy money for like 3 or 4 years and then it falls off. But it's a steady stream, 20 years, 30 years down the road, you're still getting royalties from it. So the more you put into it and the more it gets used, the more money you start to make every year from your royalties.
How many songs is that about, you think, that people have in their catalog?
I get that question a lot. I've looked into it a lot. Every library is different because of the target markets that they go after. With Megatrax, and this isn't, I mean, this is just kind of anecdotal to some degree, but usually once composers start to get around 250 to 350 tracks or songs in our catalog, they'll start to see enough money where they can live off of it. But it depends on the style of music. I mean, if you're doing like Hawaiian nose flute and solo kalimba, and you have 350 tracks of nose flute and solo kalimba, you're not gonna see that kind of money.
It's a longer road on that one, right?
When somebody wants it,
Yeah.
you got it.
Yeah, exactly.
This game is all about momentum. You have to constantly keep contributing to your catalog, and you build this catalog, and it's momentum. Because what happens is that one song, say you have 5 songs, you're not gonna really, it's like a needle in a haystack, but like, as Derek was saying, if you get like up to 250, 300 songs in the catalog, diversified across different genres, you're in a good position. But then the trick is to keep that momentum going. Write new music, because as the old songs are still getting placed into different opportunities, you have the new ones coming. And this game is all about discovery, right? So like when you're an artist, you want to have like people discover you and you become famous, right? Our job at MIBE is to help the producers and editors discover you as an artist. So it's a whole new artist vertical, fan vertical, so to speak. So like when they're on our site, it's like, more music from Eddie Wohl, right? And they go, wow, this guy's good. And then all of a sudden the producers and editors, they're like, hey, we have a theme song for whatever Fox Super Bowl. Hey, any chance we can get Eddie Wohl to do it? Because, we really like what he's got going on and all these other things. But the way that they find them, it's discovery. Same way when you're on Spotify, Apple Music, anything like that, you have to have a big catalog. It's like point of purchase. When they get there and they see, boom, this guy's got a great song, what else do they have? If they don't have anything else in there, next thing you know, they move on to the next person.
And you just brought up a really good point. Different catalogs approach this differently, and your catalog focuses on artists. Megatrax, because we've been around for so long, we don't focus on artists specifically, we focus on genres and use types. So
we're the same, it's the composers.
Yeah, but we don't really focus the artist. So if you have a really unique sound for what you do, then approaching a catalog like his is a great idea. If you're kind of like, hey man, I just can rock just standard blues, right? Okay, well maybe that's something that goes more to Megatrax. The great thing about our industry is there's a bunch of different companies and they all kind of have a different way of working and a different way of doing things. So what you want to do is look at the different companies that are out there and then try to figure out, okay, well, this one is more unique and it's more me. It's probably not something that may work in the Megatrax catalog. It might work in MIBE or might work in Heavy Hitters or some of these other catalogs that, I'm sorry, what? Or APM, yeah. So understanding the landscape can be really important to make sure that you guys are capitalizing on the opportunities that are out there. Just like anything else, if a jazz artist approaches, Def Jam or Death Row Records, it's not a good match. And the same kind of things happen in our industry. And you can go to the websites and you can look at what they do and the music that they have and then kind of determine, yeah, okay, I think this one would be a good one for me. Yeah, maybe this one wouldn't, so on and so forth. Not every music library is going to do phenomenal with every piece of music that everybody writes. So you kind of have to spread it out. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Write for APM, write for MIBE, write for Megatrax, write for some of the other companies, and try to see what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, one kind of important thing to note, a lot of people are wondering, how much do I want to invest in this? Is this something I really, spend the bulk of my time doing, or whatever? Do not approach this as, I really want to be a film composer, but I guess I'll do library. It's not really what I want to do. You should really approach library because it's an important thing to you. I mean, library has given all of us amazing careers, and it's not a place for your B-roll stuff. It's definitely stuff you want to put your heart and soul into, just like you would anything else you do. And a lot of people ask me this question, and they say, I'll be at an event, like I'm sure a million people are going to talk to me today and ask me this exact question, what do you need? And I say, well, what do you do? And okay, I'm going to give it away. For years and years, I've never given this away. For the first time, I will give away a secret. This is a secret, guys. I play a very, very, very unfair game. And it's people ask me a question, what do you need? And I say, what do you do? And I'm looking for one answer to that question. And if they don't answer the right you know, with the right answer, I smile and nod, and I will probably never work with them for life, you know, but if they are lucky enough to answer me correctly, then we can work together. And the answer is, what do you do? And I want to hear, man, I live for hip hop, I dream about hip hop, I wake up and, you know, I'm having, you know, out-of-body experiences, or, I'm rock is what I do. Or if you're going to do a few things, maybe you're a great rock guitar player, but you do some hybrid collaboration and you do some, you know, other things. But nobody I've ever met is amazing at everything they do, even though you believe you are, you're not, you know. And libraries don't want a jack of all trades that, you know, can do it all, because believe me, I've been asked to write crazy things that are not in my wheelhouse, but I really shy away from that. I really focus on what I think I do well, you know. So, you know, I don't think you should necessarily pigeonhole yourself, you know, as they say, but, you know, figure out how you can push out things that make sense, but still keep your, you know, creative integrity.
Agreed. And you know, if you focus on what you do best and what comes to you naturally, that cream always rises to the top, because that's how people become famous artists. That's how hit songs go, because if you're confused and it's like, well, I do a little of this, a little of this, a little of this, a little of this, then you're in the little of this category. You want to be, you throw a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, you're playing Major League Baseball. You're not going to go play hockey, soccer, and all the different types of sports. Stay true to who you are, and also work smart, not hard. Don't, like, you find yourself, you know, sitting there like going crazy trying to get something created and it's not working. That's God's way of telling you you're probably in the wrong vertical. It's like, you know, put that down and switch.
Yeah, I always say, put your best foot forward. You know.
And I think you and I have talked about this before. So let's say, you know, you want to branch out, you want to do something that's not in your wheelhouse, but you think you might be good at it, then team up with somebody who is.
Yep.
You know, so I've done tons of productions where I brought in hip hop guys and I've, you know, combined what I do with what they do, you know, and now you have something to really do it. One of my best friends, Chris Velasco, I don't know if you guys are gamers, but he's a video game composer. And he made, you know, quite a career for himself, teaming up with a guy named Sasha Desikian, you know, to do hybrid, you know, scores, and they became, you know, kings in the video game world. You know, so don't forget that.
Yeah. And when you, in your mind, when you say, "Oh, I do everything," that's a totally different criteria for people like us. In the last year or two, I've done a Portuguese fado album, and I did a Brazilian sufferance and samba album. I've done Tahitian log drumming albums. I've done like crazy stuff. So when you're like, oh yeah, man, I do everything. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, I'm looking for authentic fado. Like, you do that, right? Because you do everything.
They're Googling fado.
Yeah. So like Megatrax has offices around the world. We directly license in Central and South America and in Portugal, and then we've got sub-publishers in other countries. So when we release an album, it goes live in 110 countries, and we're making music not just for the US, but for all of these other territories too. So like the largest TV network in Brazil calls us up and says, hey, we really need this kind of thing. Could you do this? And we're like, sure. And we find the guys that do it. We literally, the Fado album was recorded in Portugal. We found a composer that is from Portugal, or he's from Brazil, but he lived in Portugal and he toured with famous Portuguese artists, and he knew all of these musicians in Portugal, and he recorded it all in Portugal. And when you listen to it, and when the clients in Portugal listened to it, they were like, this is the first authentic Fado album we've ever heard from the music library. So, you know, that's what we do. So for you guys, make sure you put your best foot forward. You know, if you have a forte, lead with that. It will branch out into other things over time, but you know, don't come in and say, yeah, I can do that. Like the fake it till you make it doesn't really work in our side of the industry.
And the editors and producers, they can hear it. You know, they're young kids, some of them, and from all ages, from 20s to the 60s, but people can hear what's authentic. They can see when it's like, not to say that everybody doesn't make music like this, but they can tell if the person lives and breathes the hip hop culture as opposed to someone who's putting together some beats. They can hear that a mile away.
Yeah, I've always said, as a composer, to know what you don't know. So you know what you do, and then you know how to deliver things that maybe aren't your fortes. Like Rob was saying, I team up with people all the time. It's all different genres, and you know, you can create something that maybe wasn't originally your wheelhouse, but at least make sure it's the right quality. So I think that's a really important thing, because I know a lot of artists and songwriters don't actually know what they don't know. So it's like they might think that they are one thing and they're really not. Like you'll talk to somebody and say, hey, you know, what do you think your band sounds like? And they'll be like, oh, we sound like Metallica. And you listen to the band and you're like, you guys sound like ABBA. and then they listen to jazz in their spare time. So you ask what your influences are, and they're like, Weather Report. But
it's like out of the Blues Brothers. We have both styles of music, country and western.
I think you guys are also touching on, you know, how do you present yourself? Because I'm sure everybody in this audience is like, oh, this sounds amazing. So when you're making that pitch, when you're putting together the email, or you're connecting with one of these people, you're putting your best foot forward. You're really clear on what it is that you do, even if you do other things, that you're leading with what you do best, and making that really clear so that there's not this indecisive, I do everything, here's a link to my website, you can kind of look at everything I've ever done sort of experience. And they're making it really clear here for you exactly how to present yourself when you're talking to them and other people, you know, production libraries in a distinct world.
Don't throw it all together when you try to present music and pitch music.
Yes.
Like, for example, we'll get a pitch from somebody where they're like, hey, I'd love to write for you guys. Here's what I do. And they send us a playlist, and we start listening to it. And the first track is an EDM track. And then the second track is an orchestral track. And then the third track maybe is a rock track. And maybe at the time, we're looking for something that's more country. And the country track that they did is like the 15th thing down at the bottom. And we start to listen, we're like, okay, well, this isn't really what we're looking for. And it's just one big list, there's no descriptions or anything. Use playlists to your advantage. And when you send an email, say, hey, this is my forte, I'm a rock guy. You know, if you're trying to do 90s rock, I'm your man. Here is a playlist of all my 90s rock. I also can do, you know, new wave. Here's a new wave playlist, and you just put your new wave tracks in there. I also do this. So that way, when I look at an email and I am trying to find somebody for a certain album, I can look and say, okay, well, that doesn't apply to what I'm looking for, that doesn't apply to what I'm looking for. Well, let me listen to this. And, you know, if it's good, then, okay, well, then we're gonna have a conversation. But if you just kind of mix it all together, then it's really hard to find it. And, you know, when you're trying to pitch, kind of like what you're saying, like you wanna make sure it's easy to understand and it's easy to follow and it's not all mixed together.
Yeah. Whenever you put an email together, just take a beat on it and like don't hit send automatically. Like go away, think about it for a minute, come back, and then put yourself on the receiving end of that email and see if it's concise and makes sense. And if it seems like it's too confusing to you as the sender, then it's 100 times more confusing for the receiver.
And we work in cliches. I'll give a great example. A few years ago, I mean, we've all heard it, there was a huge trend for happy, upbeat ukulele music. Like every TV commercial, like Sunny, like, right? So we were gonna do an album of that. And somehow through somebody, a guy that played ukulele reached out to me, and I said, oh man, you play ukulele, that's awesome. I need like happy, sunny, upbeat ukulele music. And he's like, yeah, I'll do a demo track and send it to you. 2 days later, he sent me this track. I kid you not, it sounded like Yanni with ukulele, but you couldn't even tell that it was ukulele because there was so much delay and reverb. It almost felt like classical guitar, but it was this big sweeping thing with, you know, big percussion and strings and synths, and he's soloing and just blowing riffs all over on ukulele, and it was slow. And I wrote him back and I said, well, I mean, yeah, you're a phenomenal player, but this isn't what I'm looking for. And he got mad at me and wrote me back this scathing email that I don't know what I'm talking about, and this is gonna be like a big thing and everybody wants this. And I'm like, dude, this is not like happy, sunny ukulele music. So understand what it is that you're doing. We deal in cliches. When people come to us, they'll say, I need smoky jazz trio for like a dive bar lounge, right? So if you're doing something and you're like, yeah man, I'm doing this jazz track, and it would be so awesome if I added like a hip hop beat to this. to be so killer. Well, now it's not hip hop enough to be considered a hip hop track, and it's not jazz enough to be considered like a smoky dive bar jazz trio. So now it never gets licensed because you're in the middle, right? So there are some catalogs that look for those kind of unique things, and they look to be the catalog that has those unique things, but realize when you do those things, the amount of licensing that you're gonna get is a lot smaller, right? Because it's a very niche thing. If you're doing like a standard, you know, hey, I'm gonna do 80s hip hop, I'm gonna do 90s rock, you have to be careful not to sound too close to anything specific. We are very adamant about that. Every single track that we release is checked by at least 2 to 3 years. We have a musicologist. Our musicologist is one of the guys that LA Superior Court hires in copyright cases. We check everything to make sure that nothing is too close to anything. Even if you're not too close, do you and we really want to spend $50,000 in court to prove that you didn't violate copyright law? A lot of the big publishing companies will send cease and desists. Just, hey, maybe we can get away with it. There's a great case, ZZ Top. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the ZZ Top song LaGrange. Right? They file cease and desists on that song probably 5 to 10 times every year. And production music catalogs freak out over it. They're like, oh my God, we're too close. Oh my God, well we're doing, but it's a little different, but I guess it's too close. And they'll send a document that was made up by a musicologist saying, this is why you're infringing the ZZ Top copyright on the song, and this guitar riff is too close to this and that, blah, blah, blah. And in the solo, you went to the minor third on the 4th measure on the 3rd beat, and our song goes to the minor third in the melody on the guitar solo on the 2nd beat, and that infers copyright. I mean, they get crazy. But most people don't remember, ZZ Top was sued over that song in the 80s by John Lee Hooker. And they beat the lawsuit by proving in court that the entire song is public domain in part of the blues vernacular, and the only thing that's copyrightable in the song are the lyrics. Yet, knowing that, they still file 5 to 10 cease and desists every year.
That's funny.
Yeah, because why not? And, you know what I mean? Like
So many questions
the
that
publishing
have come in.
company that owns it, they just will, you know, hey, we've got the lawyers on staff, we'll just go after it. And they make crazy money. I mean, they make $500,000 to $1 million a year off of people paying settlements and pulling the track and saying, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And they'll say, well, give us $50,000 and we won't sue you. And it's like, okay, cool, here you go. And I personally know a composer who owned his own little music catalog that got a cease and desist. We know him too. And he paid 50 grand out of his own pocket to the publishing company, and then I talked to him afterwards, and I'm like, bro, why did you do that, man? The song's public domain. And he's like, what? And there's no going back. And so he was up the money. He was so mad, livid.
We're getting so many amazing stories. I wanted to say we've got, also I want to thank everybody here for dropping in some amazing questions. Part of the reason why we haven't really been butting in is because we're like, oh, they are just literally talking about the answer to this question as I'm about to ask it. So I want to say thank you for all the awesome questions. You covered so much ground.
Wait, before you jump in.
Yes.
We wrote a book, it's called Get Signed and Sync. A lot of the things that you were talking about here on how to pitch your music and how to know, like, navigating the deals and such, it's in this book, and we have John brought a few copies. So find us after if you want that book.
One thing I just want to touch on that's different than the record industry, when you say get signed and sync, most people that I know from the record industry, they look at that and they're like, oh, well, that's signing a publishing deal, that's signing a record deal, and then the music library owns you for life or whatever. Music library is different in that we only deal with the specific songs. So that's why, like, Eddie will write songs for APM, he'll write songs for MIBE, he'll write songs for Megatrax. When you do a normal publishing deal or a normal record deal in the record label world or the artist world, that publisher will usually own you and everything that you write in the future for 10 years, 15 years, whatever. Same thing with the record label. With Music Library, we're just interested in the individual tracks. So you can submit songs, and then we might pick a few, and then we sign a deal just for those specific songs, but you are still free to do whatever else you want. There are another caveat to that is there are different types of libraries. There's royalty-free libraries, and then there's non-exclusive royalty-bearing libraries, and then there's exclusive royalty-bearing libraries. And you have to keep that in mind. The non-exclusive, royalty-free, and royalty-bearing, they don't care if you give the same song to another company. So you can have 4 catalogs trying to license your exact same song. And you would think that would be a cool thing. And you're like, hey man, I get 4 people working instead of 1. It actually backfires on you, and I forget the guy's name, but there was a music supervisor who had his own, I think it was his own Twitter handle, and he would literally talk about this in post-specific examples, like, oh hey, I just found this track with this one non-exclusive catalog, and they want a license for $1,000. But I just also found it in the same search with 3 other catalogs. And he's like, so now I'm gonna start making phone calls. And then he calls the second catalog and says, hey, this other catalog has the exact same song, and they want 1,000, can you beat that? Yeah, we'll give it to you for 800. Then he calls the third catalog. Hey, this other catalog has that song for 800, can you beat that? Yeah, we'll do 500. And then he calls it, and he just keeps going around, and he was posting, I don't know if he still does, this was a few years ago, but he's posting it online, and the $1,000 license ends up being 150, and then one catalog is like, oh, I can't go lower than 150. And so now the composer doesn't know any of this happened, and he's like, awesome, right? Like, we do a 50-50 split on the sync license with these catalogs. He's like, I just made 75 bucks on this placement, and doesn't realize that by giving it to 3 other catalogs, he lost $500 and is only getting 75 because they've just basically played a game. So the exclusive catalogs like Megatrax, I would imagine, yeah, you're exclusive, APM is exclusive. If you sign over a song to that catalog, you cannot sign it on to anyone else. So, in that regard,
there was one point, actually the most upvoted question, it's a direct follow-up to this, is that, it seems like it would be beneficial to get your music into an exclusive arrangement where you don't have this kind of, just the companies bidding against each other. And the question is, well, some of the exclusive libraries they don't accept soliciting. They don't accept like unsolicited submissions. What's maybe a way to get into a library like that?
This. Well, in other conferences and other events.
Yeah, I mean the PMA. The Production Music Association, we have a whole association in our.
There's a composer calling right now, asking, hey, how do I get in? Somebody in the audience is calling him like,
besides all the conferences and everything like that, what I would do is like, it's the power of the DVR, right? I would DVR all your favorite TV shows, and then scroll through the credits and pause, and when it says music provided by, look and see who those companies are, right? And those are the ones that are in the game making moves, and those are the people that are actually going to return you some results on your musical assets that you're going to invest with us, right? And then find those websites, look them up, and then figure out a way to, it might be just like on our website, it's like info@mibemusic.com. And they send over, hey, I'm a composer and I'd like to, can you check out our music, yada, yada, yada. And if it's good, like we discussed earlier, we set up a call, it happens, and then we try to move from there. But just to be clear, MIBE we have what's called the Elite Composer Group. We only have like 248 composers worldwide, and that's it. So for you to get into MIBE, it's going to be you got to be bringing the fire,
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean that's an amazing way to go. If you check out the PMA website and you
PMA stands for Production Music Association.
Can you tell them the URL?
I'm sorry, what?
URL.
Oh, it's pmamusic.com is the URL.
Yeah, you'll find all the major libraries that are anyone who's part of the PMA, and you can find the information of all the libraries. You can go to the individual libraries such as APM Music or wherever you want to go. We have a page for how do you send us your music? What do you do? And it tells you very clearly what you're looking for. And I would just say that one important thing that you should write down: be smart about the way you contact the libraries. Cannot tell you how many emails I've gotten by people saying things like, "Yo, you need to hear my stuff. Do yourself a favor and click this link. And, ask how quickly I click delete, on an email like that. It's just, no. There are ways about going about it.
One more piece of advice for the indie creators, music creators out here on what the next step is that they could take in order to really take advantage of this as an avenue of revenue for them and their music that they make.
I would say don't send something that you can't play for somebody with no disclaimer. No one in the world cares that you recorded everything yourself in your bedroom and isn't it great that I did this all. No, they want it to sound amazing and that's it. And you want to be able to just say, here's my music, mic drop. And if people like it, great. If they don't like it, no one's going to care that it's a demo that might sound way better if only.
I feel like we need a quote of you saying that, and that's going on Instagram. Like, you need
T-shirts.
Okay, you have a T-shirt. We're gonna have it. I need that T-shirt. It's me.
I would say just keep writing. Keep writing. Write as much music because that's your asset. I mean, that's what you have. That's, to me, music is just opportunities just floating around. You just grab them. If you don't know what to do with the music at first, just hold on to it. You figure out what to do with it. You don't have to write a song and that day figure out, okay, who am I going to send it to? What am I going to do with this? Just get some stuff together, get all your best music together, and when you send an email to a publisher, what's always worked for me is you send an email where you introduce yourself. Don't put a link in it, don't send music, and ask, can I submit music? So you're never in a situation where somebody's got a track right there, because I could be writing a track and then you send me something to check out without me asking you to, and it just happens to sound like what I'm doing. Now all of a sudden you're accusing me of stealing your music. So it's like, it's very important to me that, like I first asked somebody, hey, I wrote this stuff, is it okay if I submit? You have some kind of rapport. It's just not like, hi, my name is, here's my song. So,
Great. We've got about 2 minutes left.
Let's take some questions from the audience then.
Well, fortunately, you all have covered all of them. I'm not joking. All of the questions that have been asked.
I got one tip that I give a lot of people. With us, the reason why we're all friends and we're kind of hanging out, we don't compete against each other. And this is a concept that composers kind of have to understand. All of us compete against the temp track that's used initially by the editor or the director when they're putting together their visual media. If you guys are YouTubers or whatever and you're making your own videos, you'll probably notice you make temp tracks before you put music in before you actually try to license anything. So hey, we've got a scene, we need a blues track playing in the radio in the background, you'll grab a B.B. King song and you'll put it on there. And then you've been watching that edit for a month as you tweak that edit and that visual media, and you get demoitis for that song. So now, who wins the license to replace that when they're like, well, it's just a background use, we're not going to spend $20,000 on music coming from a radio in the background. The person that sounds closest and feels the most and has the same production quality to that song is the one that wins the license. And so that's what I try to tell everybody, we always compete against the temp track. Unfortunately, they all do it, even though they know they might not be able to license the track because it'll be too expensive. They're all going to use a placeholder and then they fall in love with it. Just like what we do, like, hey man, I'm using this drum thing, but I'm going to replace it later. And then you fall in love with that drum loop, or you fall in love with that synth sound, and what you hated initially. Now you're like, oh man, well now it just doesn't feel right without it.
And lastly, I will tell, if you can figure out how to get in touch with me, I will listen to your music. I don't listen to 3 seconds and go click. I listen to the whole thing, because if you took the time to play it and work on it and produce it, I feel that I owe you with the respect of listening to your music, because I would hate it if someone listened to 3 seconds of my music. So I do really, really listen to it. So do my partners. I have a catalog of my own pop machine music. Eddie is a partner. I have another partner, Steve Lamette, who is our operations manager and also engineer and producer. And any of the 3 of us will definitely go through and listen to your stuff. And if it's good, I absolutely will put it out in the world.